Namaskar. It's a great pleasure to speak on Ganesha images on the occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi, and that too for an institute which is named after the person who has initiated this festival. We'll straight away start with our presentation. The deity which is known as Ganesha Ganapathi, which we know is one of the youngest and most enigmatic member of the Hindu pantheon. He is also the most popular, one of the most popular gods of Hindu pantheon. This notion of Ganapati can be traced back to the Vedic and Vedantic literature. Though the mythology and iconography will be deliberated upon by some other speakers, I think I will be compelled to refer to some of these things to trace the evolution of this icon. Because an inquiry into the evolution of this contemplation is necessary to understand the evolution of the icon too. The name or the nomenclature that we find in the ancient literature travels through different names. It starts with Ganapati. We also know a group of gods which are known as Vinayakas. Then we come across a name called Vigneshwara, not Vignaharta. And Ganesha is one of the most popular names and the concept that is known to us today. I need not repeat all these things. Like in Vedic literature, we get shlokas, richas like Gananam Tvam Ganapati, which is in Veda. But most of the scholars believe that this Ganapati is perhaps Shiva or Brahmanaspati. But one thing is sure that even today, Ganapati is considered to be an aspect of Shiva. The Vinayakas that we know are the malevolent deities, not the benevolent ones. And they are more like Vigneshwaras who create vignas, who generate vignas, not they help you out from the vignas. If we go a little further, in Taittiriya Aranyaka, we come across some references which talk about the manifest form of this particular god. We don't know whether it is a god or not, but a term like Danti, which means one with a tusk. Or in Ganesha Gayatri, we come across terms like Ekadanta, Vakratunda, Danti. In Maitrayani Samhita, in Ganapati Atharva Shirsha, we use these terms, which give us some idea, though a very faint idea, about the manifest form of this. He is Ekadanta, he is with one tusk. He is Vakratunda, perhaps with a distorted mouth. It could be interpreted as the trunk, or Danti, the one with tusks. So these terms, these names go closer to the manifest form of that deity, but again, at this juncture, Ganesha is yet to be crystallized. So much has been written about these aspects. We need not get into these details because Dr. Bhandarkar, Dr. Alice Getty, Dr. Dhawlikar, N.P. Joshi, and many more scholars have written about Ganesha and his iconography. So I felt that I should concentrate only on the image part of it, only on the icon of it, evolution of the icon. So how the icon came into existence and how it developed further, how it evolved further. So one of the opinions that is discussed by most of these scholars is the early Ganesha is perhaps an assimilation of Yaksha images and Ganesha. Whereas the earliest Ganeshas that are known to us were in the form of Yakshas or the leader of Yakshas like Kubera. Dr. D.G. Godse, in his article on Ashtavinayakas, he has proposed a very interesting possibility. He says that most of the Ashtavinayakas are on the ancient trade routes. And very interestingly, the traditional pujaris of Ashtavinayakas are not Brahmins, they are Gurus. So that perhaps suggests that it was not an Aryan deity. So could it be originally a Yaksha which has been converted into an Aryan deity later on? The possibility certain calls for some merit, some discussion. I suggest one more possibility in the same continuation, that is it possible that these early Ganesha images, now we are talking about the Ganesha images, not the identity of Ganesha, are these early Ganesha images inspired by the natural forms? Because the description given by the Vedic and Vedantic literature is very vague. And perhaps the people started projecting that description on the images, on not exactly the images, but on the forms which they see in nature, and started identifying that God in nature. The Ashtavinayaka, some of the Ashtavinayaka images of Ganesha. Now, these forms are not carved forms of Ganesha, but the description that we find in Ganapati Atharva Shirsha is applicable to these images to some extent. So perhaps it is a travel from abstract to specific. They started visualizing this god in abstract terms depending on the description that they find in the Vedic literature, and then a god with trunk and elephant head was crystallized from this description. We don't know. This is a possibility. There is another possibility that is discussed is the Buddhist origin of this deity. The Buddhist origin again calls for a very serious attention, because the earliest known images of elephant-headed figures are found in the Buddhist context. Gajamukha Yakshas are found in Amravati and Kantak Chetinga, which is in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, the Gajamukha Yaksha in Amravati is broken, the trunk is broken, but the one found in Kantak Chetinga is exactly like Ganesha. He is flanked by so many other Ganas, which indicate that he is the leader of Ganas. But he is not Ganesha, because he is found on the lintel of a stupa. We also find Ganesha-like images on early Gandhara coins, but we do not know whether they are images of Ganesha. So, the Buddhist origin of these images can be taken into consideration. When exactly it was adopted into the Hindu fold will have to be given a thought. Whether it is a Dravida deity or an Aryan deity is also a matter of debate, because in the Dravidian languages we come across words like Pilu or Pallu, which with respect, with an honorific, it is called Pilayar. The huge Ganesh temple is known as Pilayara temple. So there is a possibility that the Ganesh worship started in South India. But if you try to look into the available images from South India and North India, it seems that this image started being worshipped almost at the same time. Even the formation of iconography, whether it took place in South or North, in both the places, the iconography is equally crystallized. Now, let's try to see the earliest images in both these traditions. So one thing is there, that the Ganesha images or the elephant-headed images from the Buddhist origin, the Yaksha images and the Hindu notion of Ganapati, they assimilated together at some juncture. But we do not know where exactly this confluence took place and when did it take place. Let's try to find out with the available images. This is the image from Kantaka Chetinga, where you can see an elephant-headed figure seated in the center, and the Ganas, they are offering things with a lot of reverence to that central image. So he certainly is Ganapati, but we do not know whether he is the same Ganesha that we worship today. I came across another interesting article, a small article by Dr. Prakash Kothari, and he claims that he has a terracotta seal which he found, and initially he bought that seal for the Nandi-like image, a seated bull image with a Brahmi inscription on it. And then he discovered that there is an image of seated Ganesha on the opposite side. He showed that coin to some of the celebrated epigraphists like Dr. Ritti, Dr. Abhijit Dandekar, Dr. S. Bhandare, or Dr. Ravi Shankar, and almost all of them placed it in 4th or 5th century on paleographic grounds. I do not know what exactly the legend reads, but on paleographic grounds, this seal is placed in 4th century, and if we subscribe to this date, we will have to consider this image as one of the earliest known images of Ganesha. The most important thing is the Ganesha has a halo behind him, which clearly indicates that it is not just a Yaksha image or a Gajamukha Gana image. It is an image of a god. So, and the Nandi on the other side also indicates its association with the Shaivite cult. So this image, I think, is a landmark image in the history of Ganesha images. Now, some people are very enthusiastic to place these images at a very early date. But since these two terracotta images are four-armed images, I personally may not place it at a very, very early date. I would comfortably place it in early Gupta period. But again, they are almost contemporaneous to the image which we saw earlier. So now I think we can comfortably say that the Ganesha images start appearing in very late Kushana or post Kushana and early Gupta period. And we certainly have a couple of more images which can be placed in the same date bracket. These are two images, two armed Ganesha images with a Modaka bowl in the left hand, and he's picking up the Modakas. You can see that they are carved in red stone, which is typical of Mathura. And on those grounds and on the rudimentary iconography of these images, it can be placed in the early Gupta period. Dr. Dhavlikar has also shown some more images which are datable to this particular period. But before we see those images, I also want to point out some very interesting images found on the northwest region of India, ancient India, and that is the contemporary Afghanistan. The first image, which is known as Sankaradhar, or obviously it must be Shankaradhar, which is dated to 4th century by none other than Dr. Dhavlikar. Now this dating is quite dependable. This was found on the north of Kabul, and presently it is at Shore Bazaar in Kabul. Dr. Dhavlikar attributes it to Kidarites dynasty, and very interestingly, this image has been mentioned by Yuan Sang. So this has to be a very early image. The other image is also found in Kabul. It's very interesting that Afghanistan is full of Shaivite lingas and Ganesha images. Now, the second image, which I am going to show you, is from a place called Gardez, and that image too has been shifted to Kabul today, and it is found in the Dargah Pir Ratan Nath. The Dargah is named as Dargah Pir Ratan Nath, and this image is still in worship in Pir Ratan Nath. This image also has a very interesting historical association, that this has been consecrated by the Huna king, Kingal. We know that Kingal attacked northwestern part of India so many times, and he defeated so many, if we want to call them, Indian kings in 5th century. This image has been consecrated by Kingal. And the third terracotta image, which doesn't have any specific information associated with it, these three images can be comfortably placed in 4th, 5th century. Now it is interesting, the people who say that it could be a Dravida god, I think these images is a good argument against that conjecture. So it seems that in 4th century, Ganesha was worshipped in the Gangetic region. He was worshipped in Afghanistan, and surprisingly, he was worshipped in the southern part of the country also. So these three images, the first one is the earliest of them. The central one is the image which we talked about, which has been consecrated by Pune king, Kingal. Now again, we are coming to the mainland India, and the image on the left is considered as the earliest image by Dr. Dhavlikar. Now it is a little surprising that he places the Afghanistan image in 4th century, and this image is found in Udaygiri caves. Very important that this cave has an inscription of Vikramaditya II, which is datable to 401 or 2, which means that this image too can be placed in the same date bracket, almost contemporaneous to that inscription. We can very confidently say that this is an early 5th century Ganesha images, which obviously is a very early image, perhaps a little later than the one which we saw earlier, or perhaps they could be almost contemporaneous to each other. The other one on the right is almost a replica of this image, but that is much later. This is found at Elephanta and can be placed somewhere around 580 AD, which means there is a difference of 180 years in between. That clearly indicates that the Ganesha iconography doesn't evolve at a great pace. Rather, it doesn't evolve at all. There are very minor differences that we can see. The early Ganesha images are with 2 arms, the later Ganesha images are with 4 arms. Sometimes there is a difference in the mount. In the early images do not have a mount. There is no mouse seen in the early images. In the later images after 10th, 11th century, you can see mouse as his mount. Then we come across tiger or lion as his mount. In Maharashtra, Mayur or the peacock becomes his mount. But there are such minor changes in his iconography. We do not find a major change in the iconography of Ganesha. So you can see that a passage of 180 years has not made any change in that image. Now we are on the west of the country. These two images are from Gujarat. The one on the left is from Tintoi. The one on the right is from Shamraji. These places are in North Gujarat. The image on the left is very interesting because it is a fragment of a Saptamatrika panel. And the people who are conversant with Ganesha worship, they perhaps know that Ganesha many a times is not worshipped singularly, is not worshipped alone. Either he is worshipped as a Parivara Devata of Shiva. We know that he is considered to be the son of Shiva and Parvati. So he is worshipped as the Parivara Devata of the Shaivite Pantheon, or he is a guardian deity who is shown with the Saptamatrikas, the 7 mother goddesses, which are not the consorts of the 7 important gods, they are the Shaktis of the 7 gods. And they are controlled by 2 gods, Ganadhara Shiva or Virabhadra on one side and Ganesha on the other side. This sculpture is a piece of that Saptamatrika panel. And the one on the right is an independent Ganesha image with a snake. This is a new feature that we are observing. We did not see it earlier. Now we'll leave these images there and go towards south. In south, we can see the parallel developments, almost contemporaneous to the northern development. Sculpture on the left is a Kadamba sculpture. Kadamba dynasty is the dynasty which ruled the coastal Karnataka and some part of central Karnataka before the Chalukyans. So this image is placed in early 5th century. Again, a very simple, very rudimentary image with 2 arms holding perhaps a lotus bud in one hand. We do not know what exactly it is yet. And he is holding a pot-like things, a modaka bowl, but it doesn't look like a bowl. But he is lifting something from that pot. So let's assume that it is a pot of sweets. A very simple 2-armed image going back to early 5th century. Again, contemporaneous to Udaygiri Ganesha or contemporaneous to the Afghanistan Ganeshas. The one on the right is a developed Ganesha, but with 2 arms, with a modaka bowl in his left hand, is from Badami, cave number 1. Badami has many Ganesha images, but this perhaps can be considered as the earliest of them. This can be placed in the early few decades of 6th century. This is cave number 1. So we can see that in this period, in 5th and 6th century, Ganesha is popularly worshipped in Karnataka. Exactly parallel developments to North India. Now at this juncture, I think that I'll show you a very interesting image and a place. Karnataka composition. Vatapi Ganapathi Bhajeham. It is in Hamsadhwani and is sung widely in South India. Perhaps must have heard it. Now, where exactly this Vatapi Ganapathi is, the question has nagged many scholars. And one of the younger scholars, Dr. R.H. Kulkarni, he proposed that the temple which is popularly known as Lower Shivalaya on the northern hillock of Badami, perhaps is the temple of Vatapi Ganapathi. Today, this temple is vacant and the peter of this temple has an empty socket in it. If you observe that socket, it clearly indicates that it was not decorated with a lingam. There must be some other image over there and quite possibly a Ganesha image. We know that in 642, when the Pallavas conquered Vatapi, Narasimhavarman calls himself Vatapi Konda, the destroyer of Vatapi. And when he conquered Vatapi, his general, Paranjoti, he took Vatapi Ganapathi as the war booty along with him, as a souvenir of their conquest to Pallava region. Now this is a known story, but nobody knows where exactly this Vatapi Ganapathi has gone. there is an image at a place called Tiruchakkattakudi. This Tiruchakkattakudi image is considered to be Vatapi Ganapati. I personally do not subscribe to this theory because the image on the left is the image of Tiruchakkattakudi Ganesh. Stylistically, it certainly is not a Chalukyan sculpture. See the trunk, which is very different. You have seen two Badami images, fairly clear that it is not from the same group. Moreover, it is quite a late image. This cannot be earlier than 8th century. And that is why, though it has been termed as Vatapi Ganapati, this cannot be Vatapi Ganapati. Vatapi Ganapati was there, it was perhaps taken to Pallava region, but we do not know where exactly it has been installed. I just wanted to bring in this interesting feature in this discussion. Now these are the Pallava Ganesha images, which go back to 8th century. The one on the left is from Vallabh, and the one on the right is a small image found in the shore temple of Mamalapuram. You know, Mamalapuram is an 8th century, late 8th century structure. So both these images are 8th century images, and Pallava images do not precede these two images. These are some of the early Pallava images. We don't find very early Pallava images. So, but the image continues from Chalukya, from Kadamba to Chalukya and Chalukya to Pallava. So it is an unbroken development that we can see in South India. Let's come back to Karnataka once again from Tamil Nadu. This is the cave which I was talking about, cave number 1, where we found that seated Ganesha image. And on the outer wall of cave number 1, there is a beautiful image of Nataraja, accompanied by the musicians, and one of the musicians, perhaps playing on the cymbals, is Gajanan. Now here, the association between Shiva and Ganesha gets very, very clear. Ganesha as the Parivara Devata of Shiva. In most of the Nataraja images, Bhringi and Ganesha accompanying the dancing god. So his association with Shiva and his identity as the Parivara Devata of Shaivite Pantheon is very clear. There is one more very interesting thing which can be pointed out, and perhaps some of you might be conversant with this conundrum. In the marriage of Shiva Parvati, this is the Shiva Parvati marriage scene, Kalyana Sundara or Parvati Parinaya, from cave number 21 of Ellora. This particular event has been depicted in so many temples in this particular period. The most interesting feature of this sculpture is Shiva and Parvati. Very interestingly, Parvati is accepting Shiva's hand. The Paurohitya is being performed by Brahma. Vishnu is doing the Kanyadana, and between these, the bride and the bridegroom, Ganesha is standing. Now, isn't it very curious that Ganesha is shown in the sculpture before the marriage of Shiva and Parvati? This clearly indicates the independent existence of Ganesha cult. So perhaps the cult existed even before it was appropriated into the Shaivite fold. It must be a minor cult which later on was appropriated by Shaivism, and then he was termed as the son of Shiva and Parvati. Perhaps some of you are aware of the fact that there are so many stories associated with the birth of Ganesha. The most popular of them is the one which says that Parvati created with her Angamala, and then Shiva came, cut off his head, and the elephant head was attached to it. This is one of the most popular stories. But there are so many other stories in which he has been portrayed as a Vigneshwara who gets converted into a Vignaharta at a later time. In some of the stories, the elephant head is attached by Vishnu. In some of the stories, Shani plays a very important role in beheading child. So all these myths, the inconsistency of these myths clearly indicate that these myths have been coined at a later juncture. Such myths are known as etiological myths. These myths are explanatory myths. So the fact is already there, and the myths are trying to explain that fact. And they are obviously much later than the images of Ganesha. But one thing is there, that all these myths, they try to rope in Ganesha into the Shaivite fold. He becomes a part of the Shaivite fold after these myths. This image, I told you that he's shown as a guardian of the Saptamatrika panel. This is from cave number 22 of Ellora, and seated Ganesha along with Kankala is seen over here. Veerabhadra is on the other end. And this convention continues even in the later period, in the medieval period. Now this is a medieval Saptamatrika panel of dancing Saptamatrikas. You can see Vinadhara Shiva or dancing Veerabhadra on the left and dancing Ganesha on the right next to Chamunda. Again, we are coming back to Ellora. One more feature which I thought I should point out, that in Ellora and in Ellora only, you can see Ganesha as the guardian deity, and he keeps the doors in cave number 17, in cave number 18 and cave number 16, the Kailashanatha temple. You find Ganesha on the left and Mahishasura Mardini on the right in the entrance vestibule. The doors are kept by this pair, and you find the same composition in cave 17 and cave 18 also. This feature doesn't continue elsewhere. It is found only in Ellora. That's very interesting. But I thought you can see that the iconography in both the cases is exactly the same. There is hardly any difference between the two, though there is a difference of a couple of 100 years between these two images. Again, we come to the same conclusion that the iconography of Ganesha doesn't change. It is, he is holding Pasha, Ankusha and Modaka Patra. You can see a snake around his waist and seated in squatting position. What interests me is the aesthetics of these images. Now, perhaps you are aware that there is a notion called Talamana in the Indian sculptural tradition. The relative proportions of different gods and goddesses have been prescribed by the Shilpa texts. Even the body proportions, individual body proportions have been prescribed. Like the great gods like Shiva and Vishnu are to be carved in Uttama Dashatala. These are carved in Ashtatala. So there are several different proposals. What should be the relation between the head and the rest of the body? So it should be 7 times of the head, 6 times of the head, 5 times of the head. This is how they prescribe. Even the proportions of the hands, proportions of the arms, proportion of the nose, all these things have been prescribed in Talamana. Let's not go into those details. But for Ganesha, Shatatala has been proposed, which means that the proportion between the head and the body will be 1 to 6. The same proportion has been prescribed for the grotesque images like Kuberas and Kichakas. The Kuberas and Kichakas are grotesque images, ugly images. And I'll show you a couple of images which are really very grotesque. Interestingly, though the same body proportions and same limb proportions have been followed in Ganesha images, the Ganesha images look extremely lovable, extremely adorable. How the Indian sculptors create this change is amazing. Now, this is what I call aesthetics. Now you can see that the first image is of the Sanchi Bharavahakas. The Bharavahakas, the Kuberas, the Kichakas, they are static. They do not have dynamism in it. As against the Ganesha images, I'll show you a couple of Ganesha images from Khajuraho. These are the dancing images from 2 different temples of Khajuraho. Now see the treatment of muscles, the softness of muscles, the dynamism, the adorable dancing posture. And using the same body proportions, the sculptor has created such a different impact, such a different effect. Now, how Indian sculptors treat their figures, how Indian sculptors treat their surfaces to create altogether different impact, aesthetic impact in their sculpture. This is very interesting. I thought I must bring it to your notice. After this period, after Pallava Rashtrakuta period, after 8th, 9th century, somewhere during 10th century, the Ganapatya Sampradaya start taking roots. Obviously, it is an influence of Smarta philosophy, the Shankaracharya philosophy, and his Ishtadevata, where the cults of different gods and goddesses, though they enjoyed the supreme positions, they were assimilated together. You may worship your Ishta Devata, but also regard the other deities as equally important. So here you can see Ganesha is being placed with the other important gods like Shiva, Vishnu, Surya, Devi, becomes a supreme god. Now he is not only the god who was enjoying the honor of Agra Puja all these years. Ganesha always enjoyed an important status in Hindu pantheon, right since his inception, right since his introduction. He was given the puja. But from 10th century onwards, he achieves a status, he acquires a status of a supreme god. If you try to recollect Atharva Shirsha, it says from the Dehatrayatita, from Gunatrayatita. Now this is not an ordinary deity, he is a supreme deity. Even Saint Gnaneshwar in his Gnaneshwari, the way he describes Ganesha, he portrays Ganesha as a supreme deity. Now, this is the change that we can see from 10th century onwards. So, on one hand, Ganesha as the supreme deity, Ganesha also as a tantric deity, and on the other hand, Ganesha as the lovable, almost a family god. In Maharashtra, Ganesh is almost a family member. In Ganesh Chaturthi, Ganesh is treated like one of the members of the family. That kind of affection, that kind of love on one side, and the supreme honor on the other side as the supreme god. And the third aspect is also very, very important. The fear is also a very curious aspect, though it is not very popular. In Tantric aspect, we come across images like Heramba Ganapathi, Uchishta Ganapathi, and we also come across the female Ganesha images along with the Chausarta Yoginis, which are known as Vainayiki. Now here, the Mahavinayaka in South India, a very handsome god, unlike the roly-poly, adorable childlike depiction in North India or in Maharashtra, we see a very imposing, very handsome depiction of Ganesha in the Chola bronzes. You can see that Ganesha are quite different than the ones which we saw before. This is from Hoysala region, Halebidu. This is known as Halebidu Ganesha, a huge image measuring about 10 feet. Very imposing, still very adorable. Now you can see that Ganesha is popular all over. In every temple you will find Ganesha, very imposing Ganesha images, sometimes too imposing rather. The image on the left is from Hampi, Vijayanagar, and is known as Sasivekalu Ganesha. Sasivekalu is mustard seed, mohori. Interesting sarcasm. It's a huge image measuring about 15 to 20 feet, or at least more than 15 feet. And they call it a mustard seed Ganesha. But you can see that the status of Ganesha is increasing. He has been given so much of an importance. The image on the right is a Mahavinayaka or Mahaganapathi image with 5 heads. And now you can see that he is riding a Mushaka. From here onwards, from 11th, 12th century onwards, Mushaka becomes kind of inseparable part of Ganesha images. The Mount of Ganesha, again equally adorable as the deity himself, can be seen in this period, and sometimes as large as a Nandi. The one which is seen in this image is pretty large. In some of the temples in Gujarat, the Maratha period temples in Gujarat, you will find a Mushaka temple or Mushaka Mandapa in front of Ganesha temple, like the Nandi Mandapa. So a large Mushaka is shown on a platform in front of. This is a very interesting feature, not commonly seen elsewhere. This is Heramba Ganapathi on the left. Now I told you that the mount of Heramba had changed. It is tiger, sometimes it is lion. And instead of one head, now he has 2 heads. He has 5 heads. We see a very different interpretation of Ganesha images from here onwards, and the one on the right is a Ganesha image from Indonesia. This is also a tantric image. Again, a malevolent image seated on the skull throne. It would be difficult to accept this depiction of Ganesha because we consider Ganesha as Mangala Murti. He is a representation of Mangalya. Ganesha is also worshipped by the Vama Margis, and that Ganesha image which normally is accompanied by Nila Saraswati, is known as Uchishta Ganesh. Uchishta Ganesh with Nila Saraswati, sometimes in the engaged in a coitus, is a very curious image and considered to be a very ugra kind of manifestation of this deity. The third one, Vainayiki, is also commonly seen in this period. Bhedaghat, river Narmada, has a beautiful image of Vainayiki in the Chausati Yogini temple. There are many more Chausati Yogini temples in which you find this Vainayiki or female Ganesha image. This one, the one which you are seeing here, is from Orissa. There are some Vainayiki images in Maharashtra also. The Bhuleshwar temple near Yaval also has a Vainayiki image. I remember seeing Vainayiki images at some other places also. So it is not a very unusual image, but people hardly know it. Very few people know about these images. The Mount of Vainayiki in the image on the right is a mule. And now we are crossing the boundaries of the country. I know we are just rushing through these images, but the time we have is very limited. And I also wanted to show you some images from the other countries. When exactly did they reach here is a matter of research, because the images which we are seeing now are from Cambodia. The image on the left is a pre-Angkor image. You know, Cambodia is mainly known for Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom. Now, this image is pre-Angkor image, which means that it may go back to 7th, 8th century. The second image is from Angkor period, and the images on the right are the post-Angkor images, which means that Ganesha was being worshipped right from 7th century on 7th, 8th century onwards till the medieval period. So consistently he is being worshipped. How and when did he reach there needs to be properly studied. But here you can see that the iconography hasn't changed at all, except now the number of hands has been reduced to 2 again. But this is not in the Buddhist context. This is a Brahmanical context, Hindu context. But Ganapati is worshipped in the same form with the same concept in the Buddhist pantheon also. This is very interesting that in the early period, in the Buddhist context, but there it is not Ganesha, it is Gachamukha Yaksha. But now, even in the Buddhist pantheon, Ganesha has acquired the same status and he is worshipped in a similar fashion. He is worshipped as a benevolent deity who images from Thailand and Java. The one on the left is from Thailand, a late image, 15th century image. In Java, he is known as Prambanan, and again, from early to late medieval period, Ganesha is seen in Java. I'll show you many more examples. Now, in Japan, Ganesha is worshipped in 2 different ways. He is worshipped in a conventional form, the way we worship him, a seated god with elephant head, holding Shankha Chakra, holding Pasha, Ankusha. You can see the Parashu in his hand, perhaps the pot or sweet pot, and you can also see the Ankusha and the radish. Radish, I forgot to mention it, in Hiramba Ganapati, in place of the tusk, we find a radish. So here also you can see this Ganesha image holding 2 radishes. So this is a typical Ganesha image. The image on the right is a very interesting image, which is known as Kangiten or Shoten and Kangiten. 2 Ganeshas embracing each other, 2 Ganeshas holding each other. Sometimes one of them is a male and the other is a female, but not necessarily. Sometimes both the images could be male images. This Kangiten and Shoten, these images are considered, they believe that Kangiten and Shoten are not should not be worshipped in ordinary temples by common crowds, because they are to be worshipped in a specific esoteric manner, and if that esotericism is not strictly followed, it can displease the Ganesha. I think the concept goes very close to the Ganesha trunk on the right side. The Ujvasondeda Ganesha is also considered to be a very short-tempered deity. The same description is associated with Kangiten and Shoten. It is worshipped by a smaller group of people in a family atmosphere in closed circuits. You can see one more Kangiten image on the left, and an image which is almost like an Indian standing Ganesha on the right, which is from Vietnam. So you can see that he is worshipped right from Afghanistan to Java, Sumatra, Bali, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan. So the whole of Southeast Asia, rather East Asia, Central Asia to East Asia, Ganesha, the popularity of Ganesha spread all through this region for several hundred years in the medieval period. We have a couple of examples from painting also. Now people have started taking liberty with the iconography, because now that people think that they can take some liberty with this deity. The image on the left, if you see it carefully, you will immediately notice that it is from a Mughal period, and he is riding on two tigers. Instead of having 5 heads like Heramba, he is having only one. And along with those tigers, you can also see the mouse running along like a pet dog. In hunting scenes, you can see such dogs running along with the horses of the king. Here also you see a similar depiction. Now, obviously, the painter has taken some liberty over here, and the same is true about the image on the right. These are late medieval images where the painters portray the god as they conceive it. Two more images. The Nritya Ganesha from Kerala with 3 heads. Now, as we said, that there's hardly any scope to take too much of liberty, but the number of heads, the number of trunks, the posture, the attributes, the vahanas, ayudhas, the sculptors have taken liberty with these things. And one of the best examples of these liberties is the famous Krishna Ganapathi from Pune. This is a late medieval temple. People, so many of the viewers, so many of the listeners must have seen this temple in person. One of the finest temples of Pune. And here, the Lord is not shown with 3 heads. He is shown with 3 trunks. And he is riding a peacock. So he has appropriated his brother's mount, and hence he is called Mayuresha. Moreshwara, Mayureshwara are the epithets. So the mount has also changed. Now you can see that there are so many variations. But again, the central theme with elephant head and pot belly is the essential. That doesn't change. And in 20th century, the followers of Ganesha, out of adoration, out of love, out of affection, they have taken so much of liberty with making of this image. Now these are some of the late medieval images. I'm sure all of you know this image from Pune, popularly known as Mandai Ganapathi, where he's shown with his concert mood. Sarvajanik Ganeshotsav in Maharashtra has gone beyond the limits to take liberties with the iconography of Ganesha. I could have shown you hundreds of examples, but the time that is to our disposal is very limited. So I think that I should conclude this session with the most well-known image of Ganesha from Pune, the famous Dagdu Halwai Ganesha. It was just a very brief presentation on the evolution of Ganesha images. Ganesha images are found in thousands, a few landmarks, and to show how the popularity of this icon went on increasing, and even till today, it seems that it is still on the rise. Thank you very much.